Good evening, I'm Maria Cozette for Horizon Armenian TV. Tonight we discuss the latest developments in the Artsakh war and measurable action taken by Russia and the U.S. Also an interview with LA City Council member representing the 7th District, Monica Rodriguez. Armenia's President Armen Sarkisian accused NATO member Turkey of obstructing international efforts to stop hostilities in and around Nagorno-Karabakh when he met with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in Brussels on Wednesday. Let's watch a segment.
I also would like to second your words that Armenia and NATO, they have a history of partnership, and Armenia all of these years was behaving as a good partner. And as you mentioned yourself, we have our peacekeepers, both in Kosovo and in Afghanistan, fighting the terrorism, Islamic terrorism there. I am here today not only to confirm that we have this several years, many years of this partnership, but also to speak with you and your colleagues here about something that concerns not only Armenia and Azerbaijan and people of Nagorno-Karabakh, but it's something which is important for the whole region. There is a statement, Mr. Secretary General, that my colleagues will distribute, but I would like to add a couple of words here. I agree with you that there cannot be any other solution to this conflict. There can be no war solution to this conflict. And we are lucky that we have the platform of OSCE Minsk Group with the 3 co-chairs, I think United States, France, and Russia. And I appreciate all the work of all co-chairs and the presidents of all these 3 countries and the recent efforts of Russian Federation, President Putin and Minister Lavrov. But unfortunately, neither some 10 days ago or even today, our foreign minister was in Moscow with an anticipation of meeting the Azeri counterpart, but this meeting didn't happen, the trilateral, and we are still seeing the war continues in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. And I agree with you, any war action and bombing of civilians is completely unacceptable. But I would like to being here in NATO, to express my concerns, Mr. Secretary General, because unfortunately, a lot of analysts and those who follow the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh around it now, when it started as a war on the 27th of September, it looks like sometimes it's no longer the conflict between Republic of Artsakh or people of Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan, but there is a third party there as well that was supporting Azerbaijan, both politically, diplomatically, heavily militarily, a third party that is involved in action there, a third party that has supported and brought to the area Islamic terrorists. And unfortunately, that third party is a member of NATO, and being here, I could not speak about that third party, and that third party is Turkey. So I do believe that if a NATO member country like Turkey will stop being a part of the conflict and will contribute to the ceasefire and to understanding that there should be a peaceful solution, I do believe that we will reach a ceasefire there, and hopefully after that we can go back to the negotiations at the table of the Minsk group and finally find a peaceful solution to the conflict.
Russia is diligently trying to stop the war in Nagorno-Karabakh and broker a peace compromise deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, as expressed by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Quote, "I would very much like this compromise to be found. As you know, I remain in close contact with President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan. I talk to them both by phone several times a day. Our foreign ministers, defense ministers, and heads of security services are also in constant contact." End quote. Let's watch a segment.
So for us, both Armenia and Azerbaijan are equal partners. And it's an unbelievable tragedy for us to see people dying there. We want to establish a full-fledged cooperation both with Armenia and Azerbaijan. Well, one thing that we should bear in mind is the history of Armenia during the First World War. The tragedy of the plight of the Armenian nation, we should bear this in mind. This was the second component of this issue. Now, the third one is that the conflict not just started as a interstate conflict, not just a fight over territory. It bursted out as an ethnic strife, a secular strife, and we have to factor this in, first in Sumaidi and then in Nagorno-Karabakh. Horrible crimes against Armenian nation were committed. We should bear all of the above in mind, and at the same time we are fully cognizant of the following fact. A situation when a substantial part of Azerbaijan was basically lost by the country is unsustainable, is untenable. And for several years we've been proposing all kinds of options to find a way out of the crisis. There were moments when we thought that just a little bit and we are going to get there. Unfortunately, it never happened. And today we are where we are. We see perhaps the worst case scenario of a conflict, and the tragedy is the loss of human life. There are huge casualties on both sides. According to our data, over 2,000 people are dead on each side, which means that the overall number of casualties is something to the tune of 5,000. For over the 10 years of war in Afghanistan, Soviet army lost 13,000 people. It was 10 years, a decade. And here we have such a short span of time and almost 5,000 people dead. And think about the injured. Think about the people who just suffer the consequences of war. Think about the children. So this is a very special situation.
Tomorrow, on October 23rd, U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo will hold a meeting with foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan separately. Pompeo stated, quote, "Our view remains that the right path forward is to cease the conflict, tell them to de-escalate, that every country should stay out, provide no fuel to the conflict, no weapon systems, no support," end quote. Let's watch Mike Pompeo's speech on it.
First question is about what I hope to accomplish when I meet with the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia on Friday. You referred to, will we broker another ceasefire, suggesting that the previous commitments to ceasefire didn't work. It's a complicated situation on the ground. It's a complicated diplomatic situation, and our view remains, as does the view of nearly every European country, that the right path forward is to cease the conflict, tell them to de-escalate, that every country should stay out, provide no fuel for this conflict, no weapon systems, no support. And it is at that point that a diplomatic solution that would be acceptable to all can potentially be achieved. That's what I'll talk to them about on Friday, and I'm anxious to hear from them what they're seeing on the ground and how we might get closer to what it is we think is not only in the United States' best interest, but in each of their countries' best interest as well.
On Wednesday, Iranian military began large-scale air defense exercises amid continued heavy fighting between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces along Iran's northwestern border. Iranian media reported that the exercises will cover half of the country and take place as if it is a real battle. The Mer news agency quoted General Abbas Farajpour as saying that Iranian air defense units will practice, quote, protecting the country's strategic sites with the help of homegrown missile, radar, and reconnaissance systems, as well as electronic warfare, communication, and monitoring equipment. The first stage of the drill involves the expansion and deployment of defense systems, including missile and radar systems, with a focus on the mobility and rapid response of operational forces, said Farajpour. An area south of Nagorno-Karabakh and north of Iran is currently the epicenter of the continued hostilities in the Karabakh conflict zone. The warring sides are using large numbers of soldiers, tanks, artillery, and other military hardware. Tehran says that dozens of rockets have mistakenly landed near Iranian border villages since the start of the war on September 27th. It has threatened to take, quote, tough measures if Armenian or Azerbaijani forces continue to accidentally shell Iranian territory. ANCA Western Region's leadership met with Israel's Consul General to Los Angeles, Dr. Hillel Newman, to discuss conveying concerns of the global Armenian nation in terms of the current war whereby Azerbaijan, with the assistance of Turkey, is attacking Artsakh and Armenia, engaging in a policy of starting a second genocide of the Armenian nation. ANCA emphasized that the international community needs to take solid steps towards a diplomatic solution. ANCA's leadership was pleased with the results of the meeting as Dr. Newman committed to relay this message and concern to the government of Israel. The request was for Israel to immediately cease providing any and all weaponry to Azerbaijan, immediately stop the shipment of any pending sales of arms or military equipment, and call upon Azerbaijan to stop using the weapons already purchased from Israel in any offensive manner, recognize the Armenian genocide, and condemn Turkey's involvement in the current war. Let's watch a segment where the chair of the ANCA Western Region, Nora Hovsepian, speaks on the matter.
We called upon the Consul General to convey to his government in Israel, and I'm pleased to say that he committed to do so, our concerns, as well as our specific asks, that Israel immediately cease the shipment of any armaments or military equipment to Azerbaijan, that it immediately stop the shipment of any pending sales of arms or military equipment to Azerbaijan, that it call upon Azerbaijan to stop using the weapons from Israel that it already had purchased in the past against innocent Armenian civilians or in any offensive manner as opposed to defensive, that it recognize the Armenian genocide, and that it condemn Turkey's involvement and Turkish aggression against Armenia and Artsakh. We believe that it is in the interests of Israel to take steps to ensure that Turkish President Erdogan's expansionist policies, his neo-Ottoman, pan-Turkic policies of expanding throughout the region and destabilizing the region, is not a benefit and in fact is a threat not only to Armenia but to Israel as well. The Consul General did agree, as I said, to convey these asks and these concerns to the highest levels of his government, and pledged to keep the dialogue open with us and to hear us out at any future opportunities as well. He further stated that Israel in the past 2 years has had a warming of relations with Armenia, and that Israel is hopeful that those relationships can continue and grow in the future. The Israeli Consul General did offer his perspective, both from a historical standpoint as well as currently what's happening, which was historically an accurate standpoint. We did share with each other our sentiments that the Israeli people, the Jewish people, and the Armenian people have a shared history of being victims of genocide and ethnic cleansing, and that gives us a natural affinity with one another. And he did also share that with respect to the Armenian genocide, that is something, recognition by Israel of the Armenian genocide is pending in the Israeli Knesset, and hopefully will be acted upon in the near future. With respect to the overall relationship between Israel and Azerbaijan, obviously they have had a long-standing relationship, both with respect to oil shipments from Azerbaijan to Israel, as well as arms shipments from Israel to Azerbaijan. They do have a warm relationship. We ask that the Israeli government use that relationship and use the influence that they may have over Azerbaijan to de-escalate. And he did also mention that Israel has attempted to broker a ceasefire between the two sides, but that the lead on that attempt is being taken by the Minsk Group co-chairs, which are France, Russia, and the United States.
Now let's watch a statement from Israel's Consul General to Los Angeles, Dr. Hillel Newman.
The Israeli consulate received a distinguished delegation on behalf of the Armenian National Committee of America. We discussed a sensitive situation. We, Israel, expressed our sympathy at the loss of innocent lives as a result of this ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I wish to stress that Israel regards both countries to the conflict, Azerbaijan and Armenia, as allies. Israel has not sided with one country against another. Israel calls for a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Perhaps Israel, as a country with friendly relations with both sides to the conflict, can assist in brokering peace in the future. We believe that peace is attainable, and we hope for a peaceful resolution as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
We are going to take a short break. I would like to remind all of you to continue your charitable donations to armeniafund.org. Stay with us for the interview with Monica Rodriguez.
Երբ գիշերն է իջնում սահմանին, մոտենում է հանկարծ թշնամին, դու ես աչքերիս առաջ իմը,
աղոթքի ձայնն է քո իմ մտքում, ամեն մի փամփուշտից ինձ փրկում, լուր ես հավատով սպասում, որ կա
թե Որոնքնեմ ես տեխնիմ եղբայրը կբերի խաղաղ երկինք ես մամ հերոս տղերքը մեր ելան բարձունքնի վեր զոհվել չկա տղեր կրվի ժամի սա հայրենիքն է մեր սուրբ հող ու հորով է Պիտի ծնկի գա թշնամի
Ես մի ծիլն եմ ծնված այս հողից Ժառանգած հաղթանակն իմ հորից Հայրս որ կռվում հերոս դարձավ Հերոսից հերոսներ են ծնվում Թե ընկնեմ հորս պես ես կռվում Կյանքս կիմանամ իմաստ կտավ Սա իմ երկիրն է Իմ ճակատագիրը Թշնամին մեր հսոր սարքից ընկա Հերոս տղերքը մեր Ելան բարձունքնի վեր Զոհվել չկա տղեր Կռվի ժամին Սա հայրենիքն է մեր Սուրբ հող ու հորով է Պիտի ծնկի գա թշնամին չկատեղեք գրվի ժամին սա հայրենիքն է մեր սուրբ ողորով է պիտի ծնկի գատշանի հերոս տղերքը մեր ելան բարձունքի վեր զոհվել չկատեղեք գրվի ժամին
Զարդիր որդյակ ուժ բերվեր կաց պատերազմի փողն հնչեց Զարդիր որդյակ ուժ բերվեր կաց պատերազմի փողն հնչեց Զարդիր գոչես ձայն հայրենյաց գենաց մահու ժամ հնչեց Զարդիր Sham hunches
Patrastelem kozenkere agavdit verevka Patrastelem kozenkere agavdit verevka Ինչպես երբեմ թագերքերը երբ կերտայիր վարշարան Ինչպես երբեմ թագերքերը երբ կերտայիր վարշարան Կրվում ենք այսպես, խփում ենք թուրքին ախպերս ու ես
We're back. I'm Maria Cozette for Horizon Armenian TV. LA City Council member representing the 7th District released this statement as one of the first to publicly announce her support for Armenians on social media. I stand in solidarity with the resilient Armenian community and join them in calling for peace and an end to the horrendous attacks on innocent civilians. So now I'd like to invite Ms. Rodriguez to join us via Zoom. Welcome and hello. How are you, Ms. Rodriguez?
I'm terrific. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. You mean so much to our message and cause. So I'd like to ask, with regards to the latest news about signing a joint statement against Mercury Public Affairs, can you tell our viewers details about what the company is and the importance of this document?
Mercury is a corporate communications firm. They also do lobbying, and they're a global firm. And they do a great deal of work in Los Angeles, but across the country. It's very easy in circumstances like that for folks that are engaged in certain local activities not to be familiar with some of the national contracts that are they're connected to. And I believe that was the case here. That said, that didn't stop our resolve as members of the city of Los Angeles to say that we are not going to be on the wrong side of history. this is a moment where we can't allow for people to be complicit in ill-gotten gain. And at a moment in time when we are watching, and frankly, so many members of our community are reliving some of the circumstances that generations and in history that Armenians had to endure, this was our time to say no more. And so I'm proud of the members of our council for collectively standing up to say that we will not tolerate this type of contractual complicits, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. So in overseeing a district with a substantial Armenian population, what have you seen and felt over the past month with the Armenians and even non-Armenians in the community?
Well, it's been heartbreaking. I've had members in my community, many of whom were visiting Armenia at the time that these attacks began. And a very dear friend of mine, her husband, sent their children home so that he could then go off to fight on the front lines. There's very deep personal connections that I have to members that are now in Armenia. Now they're dealing and enduring the tragedies that are occurring in that region. And so I think it's, for me, it's heartbreaking, but it's also one that's been heartwarming, if you will, because I've seen the collective support of our community coming together at a time when we need to demonstrate the strength of our humanity and our collective resolve to work together to help support one another. And I think this is, this has been exemplified through the pandemic, but I think even more so has really rallied all communities together to come in support of the Armenian community. And I think that's just been most beautiful to see.
It really has. There's been a certain beauty to the spirit felt across Los Angeles and really across the world. So how do you think that the different districts across LA can support and adequately communicate with one another? Because as you can see and as we discussed, Armenians are clearly fueled with energy to bring forth the truth.
Well, I think this moment has really aligned a lot of the collective outrage that communities across our nation have been crying out for, given what we've seen in terms of the social inequities that have existed that have been amplified by the effects of COVID-19. I think what's really important right now is that we remember how interconnected we are as a community. I was very proud to have in my district a collection that that we organized with the AGBU and in support of the Armenia Fund. And what was really beautiful was that here in a predominantly Latino community that I proudly represent, they were amongst the first to show up to be part of the humanitarian aid effort in bringing forward wheelchairs and walkers and all of the necessities that we could then ship to Armenia. And so I was very proud of that. I think every district across our city has the opportunity to make this type of effort to help bring forward humanitarian aid at a time when we know they desperately need it. Because while financial resources are great, when they're in the circumstances of what they're enduring over there, and we've seen some of the difficulties in getting some of that humanitarian aid crossing air territories that have been controlled by Turkey, this is a moment for us to help send over some of those critical resources that they might not be able to receive just with financial support alone.
Right, and I think the support was evident at the press conference with LA County's leadership collectively, and you present there as well. So thank you for that and everything. Lastly, I would love to ask where your love and support, endless love and support for Armenians stems from.
Well, you're going to make me choke up. It's I've been very fortunate to have some wonderful people in my life. I've been adopted by Armenian families in my district, and even preceding when I was, just longstanding friendships that I'm grateful for. My chief of staff, the first female Armenian chief of staff in the city of Los Angeles. It's with great pride that I have such outstanding people that surround me and have supported me and uplifted me. And it's because of their love and support that I recognize my responsibility to help share that same love and support at times when they need it most. And I have absolutely there's just never been reservation for the last several years when I've marched in solidarity and in remembrance of the Armenian genocide, that there is no other place that I would be. I say, I am Mexican by birth, American by citizenship, but Armenian by adoption, and by choice. And it's because of the relationships and the friendships that I've had the privilege of having over the course of my life, and I'm really grateful for that. So our communities are not very different, and it's multi-generational, and it's just out of immense amounts of pride and love that we are so more aligned than we are different.
Thank you. I choked up during that. Thank you. Thank you so much for your endless support. And I'm so grateful to have a leader like you, an impactful female leader. So thank you for your leadership and, of course, for your continued support of the Armenian cause and standing on the right side of history. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. God bless. Stay well.
God bless. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. You were watching the English news segment on Horizon Armenian TV. Please continue your charitable efforts by donating to armeniafund.org and stay tuned for the Armenian news segment coming up shortly. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Maria Cozette for Horizon Armenian TV.
Խփում ենք թուրքին ախպեր սուես